This is Masters Cast, your first He-Man and She-Ra podcast, episode number 37 for March 14th, 2010. Hey, and thanks for downloading. I'm John Callis, also known as The Shadow.
I am Martin Penny, also known as Wacky Martin.
And I am Just Lioncourt, also known as Just Lioncourt.
And Katie Rainbow Bright was not able to join us today, but she'll be back for the next episode. I think we have a really exciting episode for you today, but first let's go over some of the news that's been hitting our fair fandom this past month. And I believe Josh wanted to bring up the She-Ra biography for the Masters of the Universe Classics line.
Not a whole lot to say here, but we did get the new bio and pictures of She-Ra and her packaging. The new bio discusses She-Ra's place leading the Great Rebellion on Eternia against Hordak and the Horde, who eventually escapes Despondos, where Eternia is apparently located, and heads off to Eternia, where She-Ra and the rebels follow and join the renegade Masters of the Universe, so presumably Skeletor is in control by that point. So this is a far future of our timelines that we know of in something like the Filmation series and that sort of thing. I like the bio. I like where they're going. I like that we're getting a more fleshed out history, and I think it's very cool.
Yeah, I was fine with the bio as well. I saw some people were complaining that Etheria is in Despondos. I don't really have a problem with that. I look at it as, say, She-Ra, also known as the Champion of Light. I like the idea that perhaps Etheria is the one, glowing, nice spot of the universe in this horrible dimension, which also would mean more reason why Hordak would kind of be attracted to it, try to take it over and destroy it. So I think that makes perfect sense to me.
And we don't really know, as I was saying previously, that Despondos is necessarily a horrible, terrible place. We're only assuming that because of the Mike Young series, and the classics may handle it differently.
True. Maybe Despondos is like a roller disco type dimension.
It could be. That would give us an explanation for Disco Skeletor.
Yes, and Perfuma's conga line. So
there you go.
It all fits. It all fits. Also, depending on when you're listening to this or depending on when I upload it, either Moss Man goes on sale tomorrow, is currently on sale, or is already sold out.
It's highly unlikely that he's currently on sale unless you just happen to be listening to this in the first 14 minutes that he's on sale.
I'm a happy. That's okay. I'm a happy. I was gonna say I'm a happy subscriber, so I don't have to sit in line tomorrow, and the subscribers get unflocked ears, which I do prefer. So happy.
And we should point out that you will hopefully be hearing this before April, and when the April figures go on sale, that sale date has been moved to the 19th instead of the 15th.
Now, if I didn't have this up until like April, someone would really have to give me a talking to.
Probably so, but just pointing that out.
Right. Back to She-Ra real quick. I would like to say shame on you, Matty Collector, for packaging her in the box with the old toy crown. No.
Comb.
No, the crown on her head, her tiara. They're packaging it with let's call it the Mattel head instead of the Filmation head, and it just doesn't look good. She-Ra is Filmation. That's the design. So that'll anger a lot of mint on card collectors, I think.
You know what? No matter which one they chose, it was going to upset somebody. I definitely prefer the Filmation one as well, and I completely agree with you. But there are those strange toy line diehard people out there, and
but they're the minority.
I would tend to agree, but at this point, does it really matter? I mean, look at the uproar over Optics bio.
Well,
there's going to be.
It matters to me because I would prefer.
I agree.
The Filmation head.
I'm just saying, from Mattel's perspective, no matter what they do, they're going to get some flashbacks.
I know. I didn't complain about Battle Cat's tiny claws. People were complaining about his claws.
I noticed those as well on my battle.
Are they tiny? I don't think they're tiny.
Yeah, although I will say that it might be just because we're at least me anyway, I'm kind of used to the original had no claws.
Mm-hmm.
And now the only one we've got with claws before this one was the Mike Young one, which had very huge, kind of cool claws, and these are kind of lackluster compared to those. So I think that might be where, and it may not be that they are really that small. It's just compared to the 2000 line Battle Cat, they look small.
Claws to paws.
That's right. That's a line from which episode is it from? Is that? Can't remember.
Think deeply, folks.
I think it's the Christmas special, isn't it?
Oh, we have a winner.
I can't believe I pulled that out. I could hear He-Man saying it in my head, and I was like, which one is it? Which one is it?
Woo! All right, so the main beef of this episode, since someone just had dinner, is we're going to review the script that is no longer going to be used for a He-Man live-action movie. It's the Grayskull Masters of the Universe script penned by Justin Marks back when it was Warner Brothers who was going to do the Masters of the Universe live-action movie. And all three of us have read through the script, all about over 100-some pages of it. And it's a very interesting read. Right off the bat, I just want to get everyone's rating on it. Martin, 1 through 10, how would you rate the piece?
I would rate it around 6.
Any particular reason? Just in general.
I expected I wouldn't really like it, and I was pleasantly surprised. But there were still some elements I very much did not like.
Very understandable. Josh?
My overall rating is a 7, and the reason for that is I think this is an excellent script, and in that, if based just on its scriptness, I would say it's probably an 8. But it's not the Masters movie I would want to see, and as a Masters fan, I would only give it maybe a 6, so that kind of averages out to a 7, I think. So there's definitely elements I don't like. There's a lot I do. As just a movie script, I think it's very good.
Yeah, I came in about right between you guys. I would give it about a 6.5 out of 10. Like Josh, I thought it was a pretty good type of movie script. There are elements, though, of the Masters of the Universe mythos that I would have preferred to be handled differently than the script does. But that being said, I went into it, as I had said previously, in many places, that I am very open to them changing whatever they want. And I'll go into it with an open mind, and then if I don't like it, I will not like it after I've given the movie a fair read, view, whatever have you. So the movie starts out with an Evelyn voiceover, which really surprised me that they didn't use the sorceress to tell this tale. But I think, Josh, you preferred Evelyn.
I like what they did here. Evelyn's sort of alluded to backstory in this script is that, well, actually we should explain that there is a sort of cult on Eternia called the Masters of the Universe, who are these group of sorcerers who were entrusted thousands of years ago to hide the two halves of the power sword and keep them safe. And that sort of has been passed down through generations in this cult, and it's sort of alluded to throughout the script that Evelyn is one of the members of the Masters of the Universe in that sense, and that she's sort of gone renegade. And so in that respect, I think it made sense to have her do the opening. It kind of kept the sorceress behind the scenes until it was time to start pulling her out, and I liked the way that was handled personally.
Martin?
I would have preferred the sorceress myself, or I just don't really like Evelyn in this script as a character.
Why do you say that?
Because she's just sort of annoying. She's sort of like her Mike Young Productions cartoon portrayal in which she just sticks her nose into everybody else's business and betrays everyone and backstabs, and not really a very likable character.
Yeah, I do though. I actually like how I can see the both points, not using the sorceress or using Evelyn for the opening. Let me get that out first. And she actually tells the story about how the two swords were created, how they were hidden, blah blah blah. To me, this is not information that Evelyn should have in her general knowledge. That's why I feel that that's why I felt like the sorceress should be giving us this information. But Evelyn does play an intricate role in the script, in which I do kind of like how she does manipulate Skeletor, because the Skeletor in this script, actually we get the motivation better as to why he wants to, capture Eternia. Why does he want to do this? We actually have a better drive. At least it's described better in this script than, say, it was in Filmation, or especially it wasn't even really tackled in Filmation, but in the Mike Young it was sort of hinted at and all that stuff. But here in the script we're like, okay, Keldor is Randor's brother. Obviously Randor is top dog. Everybody loves him. Hugs and kisses. He gets the kingdom. Keldor is the ninny haha. It's not going to get anything, and then ends up with the kingdom.
Although I have
Which
to
probably...
say...
Oh, go ahead, Martin.
No, after you.
I was just going to say, which kind of leads us into my number one problem with the script, if we want to tackle that at this point, which is most of my favorite top-tier characters are killed off in this movie, and I'm not pleased about that aspect of it.
Well, let's start off then with the first one. Pretty early on in the movie, very early on in the movie, they kill off King Randor, and Skeletor takes over.
And there's no Queen Marlena, is there?
No.
Yeah, she's not even mentioned or there, but she's not. Her existence isn't denied either. It's just she's just not referenced. But yeah, I don't. King Randor, of all of the characters they killed off, he was probably the one I minded least, but I still didn't appreciate that aspect of it very much. And if it had just been Randor, I would have been fine with it, is I guess what I should say. It was the accumulation of other characters that we'll get to later that bothered me.
One thing I did like about this, though, was just like in the 1987 movie, when we come into the movie, Skeletor has already basically won. He already has Grayskull. I always kind of like that aspect of the heroes having to go, and right what has been wronged. So it's kind of like that in this movie. Right off the bat, Skeletor wins. He's not searching for Grayskull in this movie. He wants the throne. I mean, that's his main goal at the beginning of the movie, is to get Randor out of there and take over the kingdom.
Yeah, and I totally agree, which is why I think if it had just been Randor, if it had just been for the setup, I probably could have lived with it a bit better.
But yeah, I agree, though. I mean, of all the people that get killed off in this movie, Randor is the least of my worries.
I agree, although I think they'd sort of written themselves into a bit of a hole with it if they'd done, future movies after this one, because then they would have had to have a He-Man who was king, which may have worked, but may have been a bit weird.
Yeah, I think that is strange, and that is a good point, that this is supposed to be the first of a trilogy, and so now King Adam is the hero, and that is a little bit odd, because now you have to deal with sort of and they don't deal with it at all, the sort of the two conflicting interests. One, keeping the throne safe until there's an heir, keeping the ruler safe until there's an heir, and the person that's supposed to be protecting them from these horrible, horrific things on Eternia. So,
well, since we got into that, let's just jump to the end of the movie, and then we'll cover the middle, because we've already mentioned of He-Man basically being the king, and that is because while there is a transformation sequence, in fact there's two, they're not exactly how we envision them, but they are pretty cool, I have to say, the way they were written up, especially the second one. when the
Oh, I preferred the first one, so that'll be interesting when we get into that.
Well, okay, yeah, let's get into that later. So there's two transformation sequences we will cover this. They're both near the end of the movie when Adam becomes He-Man. But as we said, it's not that Adam becomes He-Man. Adam becomes this legend, He-Man, that's, said to come and save, the people or whatnot. My problem with this is there's no more secret identity. So everybody knows Adam is He-Man, and they still call him Adam. And so now He-Man, like you said, He-Man is the king at the end of the movie, which is kind of, definitely a conflict. I mean, how can you? It's going to be very hard to be He-Man out in the battles and still, king of your people.
Yeah, totally agree.
Yeah.
Well then, no arguments there.
Nope.
But that'll be interesting on how they handle that. I mean, how they would have handled it in a sequel, since this script is no longer going to be used. But very interesting, very interesting. So if we fast rewind back to earlier in the movie, Adam is basically in exile. Man-at-Arms, if I remember correctly, sends him off. He's like, "Get out of here!" He rips the royal crest from his shirt.
Like a medallion.
Yeah, so that he can't be identified. Although why people really wouldn't know what the prince looks like is beyond me. Yeah, it's one of those. Okay, it's a movie, so we'll go with that. But it ends up that Prince Adam is taken in by Zodak.
Well, yeah, we should point out though at that point, Skeletor believes Adam's dead.
Oh, correct. Yes, Adam is dead.
That's an important point.
All the royal peeps are gone. That's why it's all Skeletor. Which, by the way, you will refer to as Skeletor, and he will always be wearing. Always note to movie maker. He will always be wearing that chrome mask. Always.
Which is also not true.
Yes, exactly.
In the script.
I was waiting for there to be another note. Skeletor is now allowed to remove his chrome skull. Should we get into that for a second, since you brought it up, the chrome skull thing? Because that's mentioned early on. That is true. Now, so instead of having this like a rubber type mask like they had in the '87 movie, which I liked, and instead of doing some type of CG stuff to someone's face, they've come up with that the actor playing Skeletor will wear a chrome skull mask. Thoughts? I hate it. I hate it. It's used, as we'll get to later, as just so they can have a gimmick toward the end of the film, which bothered me. As I was pointing out to Shadow earlier, it reminds me far too much of General Grievous from the Star Wars films, who had a chrome skull type thing, and there's a lot of Star Wars influence in this movie already. It's unnecessary and irritating, and I don't like it. Martin?
I fully agree with everything Josh has just said. Very annoying that he doesn't have... I mean, does he have the skull? It's not really clear. They say that he's sort of wasting away.
Well, yeah, but, at the end, toward the end, that's what the gimmick is. It's the big reveal that his mask gets knocked off and he's got the skull underneath. It's like, just let us have the skull. We don't need... Yeah. We know it's there. It's ridiculous. It's not good. Well, guys, it saves on the special effects a budget, so they don't have to, CG his skull in on every scene. I don't care. No, with the amount of special effects that would have been needed for this movie already, take a few of those out and give us Skeletor's skull, frankly. Yeah. Well, no, I agree with you guys. I'm not big on this chrome skull idea. I actually like the rubber mask from the '87 movie. I'm not big on CG either, like Ghost Rider, that kind of stuff. No, I don't want that either. So I think they just need to be creative in their Hollywood genius and make me something that I'm happy with. Just because you've said it several times, it's actually not a rubber mask in the '87 movie. It was makeup that was caked on to his face. It's actually not a rubber mask. No, there's rubber prosthetics, though, on his face. There may be a couple of pieces, but the vast majority of it is actually makeup that they caked
Well, yeah, I mean,
very, very thick. The teeth and everything, all that is makeup.
Well, yeah, I mean, he has makeup on, but there's rubber on his face.
I don't know that there's no rubber at all, but I know the vast majority of the skull is...
wait, now, what are you talking about? Because he even says in the commentary...
that's where he talks about that's where in the commentary he talks about the makeup being heavily caked on to give it that look rather than using rubber, because they wanted it to move more fluidly with the actor's flesh.
Well, yeah, but I mean, there are still rubber.
There may be a couple of pieces. I just know the majority.
Otherwise, it really would. His face would not really look like a skull.
There might be a couple of pieces, but they were talking about it's like caked on very, very thick, as thick as the rubber would be, but it was actually done with makeup. So.
Well, yeah, in places, but I mean his entire structure of cheekbones, around his eyes, his nose, and around his mouth. I mean, if it's not rubber, I mean, it's some type of plaster substance that they...
We'll have to go back and listen to the commentary track.
Yeah, because I'm looking at a picture of him right now. He's looking with his loving eyes right into me. And, yeah, I mean, there's obviously makeup on there, but there's also... if Frank Langella's real face was shaped like that, he wouldn't be playing Frost Nixon in anything. Anyway, yeah, I'm not big. They need to learn. Take note. People complained in the G.I. Joe movie about Cobra Commander's clear-looking weird mask at the end instead of using the silver mask or the hood. So don't do the chrome mask.
Yeah, I think the thing it'll be even worse than the reaction we got to Cobra Commanders, because at least he had a variety of masks, whereas Skeletor has only ever had the one skull look.
Yes,
he's not had. They can't really. There's no room for changing it around, really. I don't think.
and actually, this kind of ties in very neatly with another point that I'd like to make before we go in with the actual story. Which is Skeletor and his minions are much less magical from the beginning all the way through this, and a lot more technological. Basically, the dark sword, the sword of evil that he has, which is the one half of the power sword, gives him the ability to sort of transform things and give them cyborg parts and this kind of thing. Including Panther, which is mentioned pretty early on as well, right around the point where we are now. Panther, instead of being this huge panther that he rides, he's like half machine. More machine now than cat. And I don't like it. I liked the fact that Skeletor is kind of the same problem I had to some extent with the New Adventures, although that was sort of forgivable because it was supposed to be an extension of the original mythos. This is replacing Skeletor's sorcerer identity with this cyborg type thing with the mask and all of his minions and the things around him. Is too much tech. We needed more magic on that side of things, I think.
Yeah, I think there was a lack of a good synergy between fantasy and sci-fi in the movie. I think it did lean a little bit more, like you said, sci-fi with the technological elements.
And too much, because that's when you start getting into more Star Wars territory. I like the fact that Masters I like the fact that it had the blend of fantasy and sci-fi, but it's always been more about the fantasy, and this one started to lean too far to the right, which I think New Adventures did as well, which is why I'm not as big a fan of New Adventures either. So,
well, Master Cebrian is not in the movie, so
no, he's not. Although he could have been. Maybe that's who Lennox grows up to be, but we'll get to that.
Yes, let's start off and say again, please don't put annoying children in my Masters of the Universe movie. I had to deal with that with Power Rangers Turbo, and it did not make me happy.
We'll get to that a little later.
So, exiled Adam, that little punk, he's taken in by Zodak, that that big punk. So
yeah, we haven't mentioned Adam's only 14 at this point.
Yeah, he's very young, and Zodak and the sorceress are all like, you can't handle the sword of light right now. Nope, nope, nope. Not your time, man. Not your time. You have to wait so we can have a couple pages of a training montage of years of training. So how do we feel about Zodak being the character that basically shapes, molds, trains young Adam?
I'm quite happy with that, I think. I could have lived with it being Man-at-Arms, but I think if you're going to put Zodak in there, then that's a good role to put him in, because his whole cosmic enforcer thing won't really work in a movie series. And I've always thought that was a somewhat pointless aspect anyway. You can't interfere, so he basically just sits around in a chair. So if you're going to have him in the movie, I think that's a good way to put him in. And I imagine him being the 200X Zodak.
Mm-hmm. Me too.
Yeah, he's described exactly like the 200X Zodak. So
yeah,
I agree with Martin. It's a good role to have him in. I didn't mind the training montage. Zodak was portrayed. Actually, Zodak was portrayed as a very likable character in this script, unlike the Mike Young's version of Zodak, which was not very likable character at all. As much as I like him in terms of the story, generally speaking, in Mike Young, he wasn't a very likable character, and he's a very, very likable, personable sort of characterization of him in this, which I liked, and I don't have a problem. The only problem really I had with this section is it's a little too much, again, as I kept saying, a little too much Star Wars influence. It's like the Obi-Wan training Luke how to use the Force, or Yoda training Luke how to use it. This is Zodak training Adam how to use the power, essentially. I mean, it's kind of what it boils down to, and it's a little too much, but it was okay. I think it's a good role to have him in, and if they wanted to go this route, this was a needed aspect to the story, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think I get your point definitely about how it being a little bit too Luke Skywalker. In this, it took so long to train Luke and blah blah blah, force this, force that. I'm not like the huge Star Wars nut, so but it's better than having, I guess, Lookie showing up, and like it could have been Yoda, it could have been Lookie and being like, "Ha, use the Force." but in my, that was not even a Yoda voice.
That was Mickey Mouse.
Yeah.
Use the power, you will.
Well, Lookie could be giving him morals of the day to be like, no, you can't kill anybody or something. But you're right. As Zodak is much less of an ass. I mean, he's not really an ass in this one, if we're allowed to say that. I don't think we've ever said that on the podcast, but we're going to make an exception for Zodak because it's a compliment. He's not like the 2000X. That's good. He looks like him though, which is good because it's a much better design. Love the the tattoos, and then what is it, Decker? Later on in the movie,
all of the people that are part of that, all of the people that are part of that Masters cult, including Evelyn, have those tattoos.
Oh, so. And while we're talking, we've mentioned this cult thing a couple times. I much prefer, if we're gonna have to call some type of group the quote-unquote Masters of the Universe. I like how it was handled in the movie here with this cult aspect, way more than how just the goody two-shoes in the Mike Young show were called the Masters of the Universe / Masters.
I agree. I agree. Not really a but per se, but there is one that it's handled much better in the movie. Much prefer it, like you. I don't like that in the movie it eventually ends up reverting to the heroes like it was in the Mike Young series. By the time you get to the end, now they are the Masters, and I wish they just left it as it was with the cult group that was entrusted with the swords.
Yeah, it would have been better to leave the endearing term earlier in the movie and keep it there. So how do we feel about... while Adam's off being trained, Skeletor is, head honcho of the kingdom and all. And he actually says a line that really got to me. It really did. Evelyn and Skeletor are talking, and Evelyn says something like, I got this kingdom for you. And he's actually sort of worried about the people of Eternia, and he's like, but my people are starving. And Evelyn is all like, what? Psh. And he's like, she's like, why is it so important that they love Skeletor? Like, blah, 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 blah. And it really shows you why Skeletor has his motivation. He wants the love that Randor was getting with these people, the old brother that he killed. So, I mean, it really, I don't want to say goes out of its way, because it's not going out of its way. This is just how it should be explained. Present us with some type of motivation. Why does, Keldor want to take over the planet? We never got that explanation in Filmation. You know what I mean? It's always just kind of been like, well, he's evil.
Yeah, I agree. And in fact, the best dialogue in the movie, throughout the movie, is the dialogue between Evelyn and Skeletor. Whenever they have a scene together, it was like, yes, now we're going to get some really good dialogue again. And that was an excellent scene, and I love the motivation and how they handle that with Skeletor. They definitely make Skeletor, especially early on, a much more human character, a much more of a character that you can sort of identify with on some levels, which I really like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's not, and like I said, I can't say this enough. I love that they actually give us the drive. Why does it? I mean, even the 1987 movie, it really didn't. It's like basically all he said is it was his destiny.
Yes.
Well, okay. My destiny is to, go to the Dairy Queen after this and get myself a Blizzard and eat it. It's yummy. It's so good. That's stupid.
Yep,
so,
I agree.
This is much better. I applaud Justin Marks for his interpretation of Skeletor's motivation. But it is Evelyn who points out to our fair friend Skeletor that Prince Adam is still alive.
See, I agree with you about the motivation of Skeletor, which I think has, as you say, always been quite lacking. But Skeletor himself and how he's portrayed, I don't like. It was one of my major problems with it.
Do explain.
Because he's such a sort of weak, pathetic sort of character throughout the film, and he's decaying, and he's just sitting in his throne and complaining, and he's letting himself be manipulated by Evelyn, and I just don't particularly care for He's just comes across as sort of a shadow of his former self, I suppose.
Well, it's because he's not Hordak. Hordak is the ultimate evil.
Well, let's not start that again. But I will say I get where Martin's coming from. However, I do think we sort of see the transition throughout the film. Yeah, Skeletor starts out that way, but I think eventually he does sort of become the badass, for lack of a better term, villain that we're used to. He just doesn't start in that point because he's decaying away and all of this because of the sort of darkness that he's obtained. That Evelyn got for him in the desert somewhere. And in that aspect, I think Skeletor, or Keldor, I should say, wasn't evil per se. It was his, it's almost a Darth Vader thing, unfortunately. It's sort of like his desire for the kingdom combined with the sort of darkness turns him into the villain over the course of like the first half of the film or so. I'm okay with that. I think it's all right.
Well, I like your point there. It is kind of like a Darth Vader thing. I didn't really realize that myself, but it does make sense. I mean, fueled the sort of darkness is basically amplifying, the jealousy he had of Randor, the desire for the kingdom, the desire for the people to love him, that kind of thing. So it's amplified, much like, when Anakin is getting, tempted by the dark side of the Force.
Right.
Why you would listen to anyone, Anakin, that looked that ugly, it's beyond me. If they're ugly in your world, they tend to be evil. Hasn't Anakin ever seen a movie before? Anyway, but no, I kind of agree. I can see your point there, Martin, too, because, the Skeletor we're used to, too, is like he'll go out there with his Havoc staff and, blast some people. It's not really happening the same type of way in this movie.
And I missed the Havoc staff.
Yeah, there was no Havoc staff, was there? Or at least it wasn't mentioned. He could have a staff.
Yeah, that's true.
But it is more focused on the Sword of Darkness.
Yeah, I wish, though, that the staff had played a role somewhere, because to me, that's sort of like Skeletor's iconic thing. It would be like if He-Man didn't have the Sword of Power. Skeletor has to have the Havoc staff, and I missed it.
Well, maybe, and I'm just throwing this out there, had there been a sequel, because at the end of the movie, much like the original movie, we get a little scene to tell us that, Skeletor will be back. And perhaps in the second movie, the people that bring him back to life perhaps would give him power through a Havoc staff.
Perhaps.
Yeah. So anyway, I was thinking that, the Havoc staff could be given to him in the second movie, but I agree, that's iconic, at least in our minds. He should have his Havoc staff. So maybe it's sitting there. I don't know. Another thing from, while we're pointing out artifacts or what have you that are in the movie, Doom Seekers are featured heavily throughout this, much like in the Mike Young cartoon. How do we feel about that?
That was fine. I liked Doom Seekers. However, in addition to those, way better, way better, heavily in this movie, Roton.
Oh, I know.
That
Score.
Was cool.
Score one for me. I love the Roton. That is like one of my favorite vehicles, and I'm so happy they used Roton. And Attack Track is in there too.
Attack Track is in there a lot. Also, great vehicle. But yeah, the Rotons in particular, I was happy about because we didn't get them in the Mike Young series at all. Because I think we didn't we get in the show, we got an Attack Track, I think, at one point. Didn't we? Or didn't we? I can't remember now. I think we did. We never got a toy, but I think it was
toy.
I think it was in the show once, but the Rotons and the Attack Tracks, that was nice. That was very, very nice. Very happy. And the Doom Seekers are fine. I like Doom Seekers. They're a good spying mechanism. Makes sense. Skeletor would have something like that. Good.
Martin?
Yeah, I was happy to see them included. And there's a lot from the MYP series, isn't there? Like Deca and various other elements I noticed popping up.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely influence, a lot of influence from the two, just ideas, if you will, from the 2000 Mike Young show.
And I really, really like, since we're on the Mike Young thing, the fact that they axed the stupid symbol from his armor from the 2000 series. And Marks goes out of his way to say that it's the cross version of the symbol in this.
Oh yeah, that's mentioned several times. About it
many
being a cross,
times. Yeah, because it's both the royal crest and the He-Man symbol and the whole deal. So very glad that it was the cross and not the asterisk or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
The stupid H.
Excuse me. Yes, definitely. That's it seems to be gone, which is great too because the Masters Universe Classics line of toys has the cross as well. They got rid of that.
I mean, I will say I like the initial 2000 symbol, which was the cross with the little crack in the top of it, or for lack of a better description. That one was fine because it was still the cross. It was when they turned it into the weird symbol that I took issue.
One thing we forgot to mention earlier on in the movie, Cronus is actually part of Man-at-Arms' group.
It's troops.
Yeah, and later becomes Trapjaw.
And that was fine. That was cool.
Yeah, I like that, although I will point out that I feel that I like that idea, but I felt they should have done it with Triclops, because Triclops, to me, the newer version of Triclops, seems to be the man-at-arms for Skeletor. So I would have that kind of would have made more sense to me.
That only makes sense though in the context of the Mike Young. Really, if somebody had put those two characters in front of me before Mike Young and said which one is the Man-at-Arms counterpoint, I would have pointed at Trapjaw. He's the one with the gadgets and the weaponry and the mechanical arm, and he should in some respects you could argue he should be the one that's the sort of the evil Man-at-Arms counterpart.
Well, Well, to
in
me,
some respects.
at least, though, too, like, Triclops seems a bit more human, I guess. Maybe because he doesn't have, like, mechanical arms and jaw.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean,
But,
I like both those characters.
yeah, I mean,
I don't really care.
I fully admit, though, that I am taking this directly from the, Mike Young version of Triclops. That to me now is like the definitive version of Triclops. Not
Yeah,
really,
I agree.
yeah,
I mean, he was
so.
definitely a better, much better version. But what was the catch? What was the what's the tagline on Trapjaw's packaging? Isn't it like evil master of weaponry or something like that as well? So
It could be.
it kind of makes sense. I see both sides of it. If we took the Mike Young out of the equation, though, I think Trapjaw actually does probably make more sense. But I do like Triclops in that role better.
I just would have liked a scene where, instead of slashing that dude, Cronus's jaw, can you imagine how nasty a scene would be with them slashing Triclops' eyes? This is your rated R He-Man, folks.
Oh, it definitely is. In fact, that scene, what you're talking about, we kind of get later, but we can get into with Triclops. But we'll get to that.
But so anyway, what do we want to jump to next?
Well,
Adam is still being trained. He's making his way back to the city.
Well, no, that's later.
Well, what do you want to go to before that?
He does his training. He's in the midst of his training. That goes on for 7 years.
Yes, very long.
They end up in the ruins of a village that doesn't exist anymore called Primus, which is strange.
Yes, that was very strange. And they have a meal, don't they? They like eat.
Yeah, they eat something.
We watched them sitting and eating. It kind of reminded me of when Prince Adam went to the restaurant in Secret of the Sword.
but there's nobody there.
No, I know, but it's just like I'm picturing them like
and then
at this little table.
Yeah,
Sorry, continue.
That's okay. But then number 2, next problem I have comes up. I realize I'm pointing out a lot of problems. There's a lot good about this script. So I don't hate this script by any stretch. But Skeletor's people attack with I think Triclops is in the lead there, and kill off Zodak.
Bye.
He's gone. That's the second main character they've killed in this script, and we're not even 30 minutes into the movie.
Well, can I go over some? I have some reasoning as to why there might be so many deaths. Masters of the Universe has so many characters to pull from that if we don't kill some of these people off, you're going to expect to see them in the sequel.
I agree, but there are lesser characters that I would be much happier with being killed off than these sort of top tier ones that they did, because some much lesser characters that I don't care about survive the film.
Well, should we care though about Zodak? To me, Zodak, now in the movie he's a top tier character, but overall in the history of Masters of the Universe, I would not really rank Zodak as a top tier character, despite the fact that he was one of the earlier characters ever created. I wouldn't put him as like top tier.
I always did, but I definitely understand the argument that some may not. But for me personally, he was always a top tier. He was in the Filmation series. He was in the early comics. He was one of the first figures. He had that neutral position. He was in the Point Dread record thing. He was sort of always everywhere. In as my perspective growing up, I always considered him one of the top tier. But I get where you're coming from, in that you don't really consider him in that group.
Martin?
No, I'm generally in agreement with John in that I could see him having a large role in one film, but not if they went on. I wouldn't miss him.
So let's quickly go over then who else dies. We have Randor, Zodak, Evelyn, technically Skeletor, although he's going to come back.
Trapjaw and
Triclops are both also killed. But to me, I don't know. I kind of don't mind. I don't care that Randor dies. I think Evelyn, the way she was killed, she can be revived. In my personal opinion. Now, Trapjaw and Triclops, I can live with because we're going to get replaced with two other interesting characters in a sequel.
See, no, I can't go with you on that one. Trapjaw and Triclops and Evelyn, those three to me, those are the core. And granted, this is largely because of Filmation and Mike Young, but to me, those three, those are the top tier. They're the only people above them is Skeletor. And
what about Beastman?
see, Beastman to me is one tier down.
I don't know. I think
personally.
Beastman is more identifiable with Skeletor than Trapjaw and Triclops.
Yeah, not for me personally. Again, I see where you're coming from, and I understand that some fans will feel that way.
I agree with you that I would say rather see Beastman killed than
Yeah,
Trapjaw
exactly.
and Triclops.
So that really
Beastman, sorry, just isn't that much of an interesting character in comparison to the others.
Yeah.
In that he's more of a sort of a standard henchman you could dispose of, whereas the others
exactly.
are more interesting characters.
I mean,
Exactly.
And to me, even it just seems too that like if you even look at the last movie, which actual Skeletor villains made it into the movie? That was Beastman and Evelyn. I mean, I have always, I guess, considered Beastman to kind of be his main henchman, just from the Filmation cartoon and the rest of the stuff. But I totally agree, though. Kill him off. Leave us with Trapjaw, or don't kill off both Trapjaw and Triclops.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. And boy, those two in particular, Trapjaw and Triclops, were gruesome deaths in this film.
Yeah, and I don't know. I have a conflict on this, too. I really think that He-Man should be rated PG-13. I don't know what you guys think, but I mean, all these other successful ones are PG-13. Spider-Man, Star Wars is probably actually PG. Batman. And I mean, you can get pretty nasty. That Dark Knight movie was a little dark, and it was still PG-13, if I think, right?
Yeah, it was.
So, I mean, sometimes the script is going to write it a bit more violent than what we'll actually see on the screen, I guess is what I'm saying. But, I mean, best for him to write it and then edit it down later.
Yeah, essentially on those two, Trapjaw gets decapitated, which isn't too bad, but is basically gets decapitated and his head rolls on the ground to Man-at-Arm's feet. Triclops, on the other hand, gets hit, if I remember right, with a sword, I think it is, up under his visor, which rips off the visor and the top half of his head, which is pretty gruesome.
It's something like Teela throws a flare into his helmet or something like that.
I can't remember exactly what it is, but I remember it says basically
it's not very nice.
Most of the top half of his head is ripped off.
Oh, and here's you mentioned Teela and her flares. Man, they use flares a lot in this movie. I mean, they must be carrying around like a backpack just full of flares. It's like, oh, Teela, I can't see down in this cave. Light a flare. I mean, it just...
I was actually picturing that being more akin to a sort of flare version of the Filmation things where they were always firing blasts out of their wristbands and that's what I was picturing, was it was coming out of like her wristbands.
Well,
I'm not saying that's what he said that it was, but that's what I was picturing.
But even if it's not, I mean, that would be kind of cool too. Like if she was just like, touched her wristband and it started to glow or something. That to me is Masters of the Universe. Yeah,
and that's what I was picturing, but that's probably also influenced by past material more than... He doesn't really specify in the script, so...
Yeah, because when I read the word flare, I think of a road flare, and then that's what's in my head. You know what I mean?
Right,
so it's a little hard to get the imagery out of just, like Teela holding this like red-looking stick of dynamite around.
Yeah.
Where's the cave?
She had car trouble.
Oh, well, we mentioned Teela. I like Teela in this. I like how Prince Adam comes back and he's all like, I'm King Randor's son. Oh, and she's all like, who do you think you are?
Yeah,
she has the attitude that she's supposed to have.
Yeah, well, what's very cool with her is she is a really good blend in personality of the Filmation Teela and the Mike Young Teela.
Yeah, she's not as bratty by any means as like the Mike Young Teela.
Who I liked a lot. I know a lot of people didn't. I love the Mike Young version of Teela, but this one's even better, I think, personality-wise. It's a really good blend of the two versions that we're used to.
Mm-hmm. Martin?
Yes. Most likable version of Teela to date, I think. I like the Teela action figure. and the actual look she has, but I always hate the character when they do her in the cartoons because I'd always just think, oh, shut up, Taylor. But in this, she's actually useful, and I like her.
Yeah, this could be a Tila I could get behind. No pun intended. She's definitely the best written Tila, I think.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with personally. I think Mike Young is a close second, but I think this one's better, personality wise.
Now, okay, so where shall we go next then?
Let me jump in.
Okay.
Because the one of the next things that happens is Adam does return to the capital city, which I believe it's not Eternos, but it's something that sounds really stupid. And I think it's Eternius or something like that.
Yes, well, the way it was spelled, I just didn't know if maybe he wasn't sure what the city, how to spell it. But it's not Eternos. You're right. It's like Eternus. It was different than.
It sounded stupid.
Yes.
In my personal opinion, go with Eternos. It's fine.
Yeah.
But anyway, forgetting that, he goes there. He's sort of like undercover in the city. Oh, he gets sent there. We should point out before I get to this point. He has like a dream. The sorceress comes to him and tells him, go to the statue of King Grayskull in the city.
Well, also, when you're talking about dreams, real quick, Man-at-Arms has a dream, right, that an angel comes to him and says, like, the sun will rise to save the
Yeah, that's
planet.
somewhere in there. I think
I'm assuming the angel was the sorceress.
Right. Yeah, that would make sense.
Yeah.
That would
all
make
right,
sense.
continue. I'm sorry. I just want to throw that in there.
That's all right. So he has this vision, essentially, that he needs to go back to the city, go to the huge statue of King Grayskull outside the royal palace, and which is apparently Grayskull's tomb, and he's supposed to go there and find something, but he doesn't know what. So he goes into the city, gets involved in a huge big battle sequence with Skeletor's people and Trapjaw, and there's all this stuff going on, and it turns out at one point that he sort of ends in a standoff with Trapjaw. Because the people in the city are starving, they are in a bad way, and there's a very cool line. If it's in there, I think for no other purpose really than to please the fans and to give us something to smile over. But I loved it, love it. They're having the standoff. Skeletor's men are coming after Adam. He turns to the crowd of bystanders who are suffering. And says, I am Adam, the Prince of Eternia. And I just that's great. I like it. Great throwback in there. And it kind of set up that great scene where the people, believing him, sort of are standing behind him against Trapjaw and Skeletor's people. That was a cool little nod to Filmation and Mike Young, and just liked that a lot.
That's definitely one of those scenes where, I mean, if you didn't know it was coming up previously, obviously this isn't going to be made now, but if you're sitting in the theater and I can just see like the camera panning around to him in that, and he's like, I am Adam, Prince of Eternia, and you would get that chill.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Oh, did he just say what I think he said?
Yeah, and I got that even just reading the script.
Yeah.
I got that.
Yeah. There were a few times in the script where I was like, oh. Like, not necessarily even though that it was, like, a direct reference like that, where I was just like, oh, this is good.
Yeah,
and I got that,
agree.
like, excited, like, chill. I was like, ooh, what's going to happen next?
Yeah, absolutely. So that was one of the best scenes in the film. That line and the way that it was put together, the moment that it was used was perfect. That was very, very good.
Well, now, shortly after that is when... Isn't that when Evelyn is trying to convince Skeletor to go get the Sword of Light?
Yes,
yes.
Although I think that happens...
Or a little bit after this?
I think that's a little bit... Yeah, it's right before all of this, I believe. Okay. Because she actually tries to convince Adam to go with her.
Yeah. She's sneaky.
She is, yeah. She tries to get that to happen. Of course, Skeletor's people end up taking her into custody, as it were. I will say, as much as there's good stuff, there's bad stuff. This particular action scene with the battle in the city was very cool. Mm-hmm. From this point forward, there are too many of those kinds of scenes in the film, I think.
Well, but if you have to think too, there was a lot of non-battle scenes at the beginning of, you know what I mean, throughout the the first half of the movie.
Right, but then there's definitely too much.
Yeah, it's like they packed it all in, halfway through.
Right.
A little too heavy there on the action sequences. But Evelyn had told him that he needs to take out Prince Adam as well, I think, and he goes outside to ask the people to reveal to him where Adam is, and they won't even speak to him.
That's right, and when that pisses him off, and he has this weird vial thing that he puts in the ground that creates a mechanical monster in the earth that comes up and kills people.
Yeah.
With giant tentacles. It's very strange and makes no sense.
Yeah, it made no sense. I like the scene just because it finally shows Skeletor that he'll never have, the love of the people like King Randor had, which, this is what pushes him over the edge, basically. He's been teetering right there on the I'm going to kill you edge. And so then he finally does it. But why? Why is it this random vial that he just has and throws it in the ground and there's tentacles?
Well, yeah, the vial is supposed to have this black smoke stuff.
They've referenced this from the sword, too, haven't they? Where it's like Skeletor and this black mist magic.
Yeah,
dark tendrils.
That apparently comes out of the sword, so I guess it's a piece of that. But it just it still wouldn't make much sense, but it would have even made at least a little more sense if maybe he just thrust the sword into the ground to make this happen or something. The vial thing just is so random.
Yeah. So very random.
He also unleashes Panther on some people he doesn't like, doesn't he? At one point. And I thought that was quite a good scene.
I like the scene. I don't like that Panther's a cyborg cat now instead of just a panther.
I don't know. I think I kind of sounded quite scary when they were like unleashing him. I could picture that being quite a good scene.
Yeah, I like the scene. I love the scene. I just don't. I don't like the overuse of technology on Skeletor's side, and that was just one more example of it.
Well, now during this, isn't Adam Man-at-Arms? They're like underneath. They're in the underground city at this point.
In the catacombs.
Yeah, like hiding out, looking for the tomb.
Well, yeah, they know where the tomb is. That's where the resistance fighters are. They're like literally underground.
Underground.
And Adam gets down there. He meets Attila actually abducts Adam on the street and takes him down there after his battle, which I thought was kind of cool. Showed her prowess as a warrior, and she takes him down there. And although it is a little cliche, she like has the bag that she puts over his head, and it's like, are you kidding me, really? But yeah, she takes him down into the underground. He is reunited with Man-at-Arms. She actually doesn't believe Adam that he is Randor's son until Man-at-Arms confirms it in the scene. Well, and we also meet a new character, Colonel Logan, at the same time.
Yeah, and it's I might be jumping too far ahead here, but Decker doesn't believe Adam either until
that's a little later. Yeah,
until the crest, the cross, kind of like shines from within. Right, when he's like gonna kill him.
Little cheesy, but
yeah, to me that's kind of like if you were like killing Superman and it's like Chan, that like symbol like actually comes out of his chest.
Yeah, it's a little strange.
Yeah, it was like okay.
But that was a little later, but I mean we can kind of jump to that because nothing much else interesting I think happens in between. Well, basically,
like they're down there in like the tombs and the catacombs, and they're walking around and talking.
Yeah, so they end up taking Adam. He tells him he needs to get there. Adam, Man-at-Arms convinces his people, his warriors and troops, to take Adam to the tomb of King Grayskull, which is near the royal palace, which Skeletor had apparently raided at some point previously, but had not discovered the secret under the floor compartment.
Yeah,
again, another kind of cliche thing, but where they end up, and that's when the Master's cult comes back into it again, led by Decker.
Yeah, now this is where I run into a problem. Decker was in like what?
One episode.
Yeah, 1 or 2 episodes of Mike Young.
Just one.
Just one. Was it
Yeah,
The
just
Island?
one, I think.
He was in The
Yeah.
Island.
A bad episode.
Yes, which was one of the worst episodes of that entire series, okay? I mean, I rank it down there pretty low.
I love Mike Young, and The Island is quite probably the worst, I think, in my opinion. I love Mike Young. So, actually, I think it's second worst. The worst was the Man and Machines, or whatever that was.
Oh, of Men and Machines, yeah.
Yeah,
that was pretty bad, too. With Sortek, right? Was that his name?
Something
Wizard of
like
Oz.
that. And he was like the Wizard of Oz, and it was just lame. There was no redeeming qualities in that one. but-
Now, here's what I think Decker should have been Master Sebrian. Or they could have called him Sebrian. Since this movie is not being made anymore, we're going to just change his name to Sebrian for the rest of the podcast. So anyway, Sebrian is down there now. But yeah, Decker is used. I don't know why. I think that's stupid. Use a character that we know. I mean, you have so many characters, that people know that are already there. Why do we have to keep creating new ones? And I said this with King Grayskull. I say this with Decker. It's just not needed.
Yeah,
well,
he could have
Decker,
been-
I think Decker was fine in Mike Young, just as sort of this was
One-off character, yeah.
Yeah, and it was Duncan's mentor and whatever. That's fine. As a important character, this guy is the leader of the Masters at this point.
Yeah.
It's just weird. It's so out of left field. Pick somebody else, or have saved Zodak or used the other Zodak. Or something. They could have done so many different ways with this, and it's just strange having Decker. More annoying, though, is the fact that he's got a bunch of masters in training who are all these, 10, 11, 12-year-old kids. It's just Lennox being who becomes first of all, stupid name. Second of all, he becomes a prominent character for the rest of the film, and he's like this 12-year-old. We don't need annoying children in the movie.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that it kind of like you were saying about Star Wars. It's kind of like how they had all the little Jedi kids.
Yeah, no, stop it.
Well, we just need Anakin to come and kill them all.
Yeah, maybe, or maybe Lennox is going to grow up, to become Master Sebrian, or maybe he's going to grow up to become Orko. I don't know, but
oh well, we should mention that. Thank you. There's no Orko.
There's no Orko.
There's no Orko.
I understand why I don't think it would have worked in this script, but I want Orko in a Masters movie.
Maybe the sequel would have had Orko.
Maybe
Maybe Lennox is actually Dare, son of Hero or He-Man in the Masters of the Universe.
Oh, God.
He is a not a good character.
Yeah, no, we don't like children.
Particularly, the name irritates me greatly.
Maybe the screenwriter knew someone named Lennox.
I keep thinking Annie, and it just doesn't work.
Annie?
Annie Lennox.
Oh, the singer.
Yeah.
I thought you were talking about the musical or something. I'm like, I've never seen that. So is there some Lennox character that's sitting in there?
I may have some Chandler characteristics, but that is not one of them.
Chandler character. Now you're.
He had the soundtrack to Annie in his CDs.
Well,
they referenced it several times in Friends.
He's still awesome. Chandler, come on, we can't dog Chandler. He's the best. He was voted by TV Guide America's favorite friend. So there you go.
Hey.
I'll just continue on here. I like was talking about Decker. I did like how Adam was giving it right back to him. Like what Decker says something like, give me the royal crest, and Adam's like, I can't give you back what's already mine. Counterpoint.
Yeah, that was cool.
So I mean, I don't know. I liked some of the dialogue is very spiffy. I think.
So it's very funny in this movie. Some of the dialogue is spectacular, and some of it is so bad. And it's interesting. I don't know anything really about Justin Marks' other films. I don't think I've seen any of them. But the dialogue seemed really uneven. It was like he had certain scenes where he knew exactly what he wanted and he nailed it, and then he had other times where it was just like, oh, I'm just going to throw whatever comes into my brain here, whether it sounds stupid or not, sort of thing. It was a little uneven that way and perplexing, because obviously he's a very talented writer when he's on form, and he just wasn't all the way through this.
Yeah, I can see that. One thing, too, we need to mention. Going back to Decker, because I kind of like him, but I don't want to, as we already said. But what I don't like is that he's the, leader of this master's cult or something, and he has this magical power. To me, he should have been able to sooner realize that this was, Randor's son. I mean, it's kind of like Adam has to go out of his way to kind of convince, and he's all like, I know who you are. You're the master's cult. You're supposed to be protecting, Grayskull's legacy, which means you're supposed to be protecting me. It's like Adam has to explain this stuff to these, the so-called master's cult. I think they should have been a little bit more in the loop.
Yeah, agreed. We should also maybe mention now that the sorceress, at this point, I believe by Zodak, was mentioned to be one of the original 6 masters who hid the 2 swords, and she's the only one still living.
Yeah, and I'm just going back to like cliches and stuff. It's like one of those things. It's like they split up the 2 swords. Isn't this like Lord of the Rings or something? Did they split something up or something and put one over here and they put one over there? I don't know. I don't like Lord of the Rings. That's just what popped in my head. But it's like, why don't you destroy the things? Then you don't have to worry about people finding them.
Yeah, maybe they can't, or I don't know. It should have been explained. You know what? Can we, just for a second, we'll press pause here. One other thing I just remembered that I wanted to mention while we're on this thing with the swords and the masters and all that stuff. There was a sort of religious subtext to the beginning of the film that I thought was unnecessary. I don't care. I am not particularly a religious person per se, but I think they're just asking for trouble in doing that, where at the very beginning it was supposed to be the sword of light that created all life in the universe. And I'm like, don't need to mention that. Let's not have another thing like we had back in the 80s with the religious zealots, out for our blood, so to speak. Let's just not go there. It's not needed, and it's going to cause controversy. Stop it.
And I didn't like the whole blacksmith guy who's making the swords.
That was weird too. I'm not sure what the point of that was.
Random blacksmith guy has the power to make these awesome swords. I was just like, okay.
I mean, I think the idea there was supposed to be he is God and he created the swords, which.
Oh yeah, I guess that's true. But that definitely plays right into your point.
Yeah, and I don't think it was necessary. It's asking for trouble.
Yeah, like I said, the beginning of my movie, if I were to write it, would be like that. The storybook.
Castle Grayskull.
Castle Grayskull storybook. That's how it would start out if we have to have this explanation.
I am 100% behind you on that. That was the best origin type thing.
Everyone go to eBay, buy that book on tape, and
it is.
Listen to it.
That one and the LP one that's like an hour long.
With the vortex.
Yeah, that is also excellent storytelling, excellent writing in that particular one, given what it is. Yeah.
I love that one too.
Even in the name, you could hear the magic. Love that. Yeah, it's good stuff.
Now, before we hit pause, and now we're going to unpause, Martin, were you going to explain to me the Lord of the Rings thing?
Oh, I was going to mention that the 2 openings are very similar.
Of Lord of the Rings?
With like someone, like a woman narrating the backstory, and there's even a shot, I think, in Lord of the Rings of them making the ring with the whatever they do to make rings, like blacksmiths.
Oh yeah, like forging the, putting the metal
and then
into the.
Yeah, exactly, and then the 2 armies coming together. Very similar.
Can you imagine if we were school teachers real quick, and I'm like, yeah, you know how they make rings? They put in the thing and they go.
There's a lot of blatant. I don't want to say plagiarism because it's not that, but it's just stuff that's so been done. The Lord of the Rings thing, the Star Wars stuff, and I'm a big Terry Brooks fan, and I would love to see Masters done Terry Brooks style, but there's so much in this that you can point at and say this is exactly like this scene in this Terry Brooks book, and this is exactly like obviously Justin Marks has read his Terry Brooks. I would be shocked if he hasn't, because there's so much that's just lifted directly from Terry Brooks books that you just kind of shake your head and like, we should have done this differently, sort of thing.
Well, I mean, in this day and age too, so much has already been done. I
know.
It's a wonder to me that people can still make like songs that we have not heard yet, because we've had so many songs. It's like, how do you keep coming up with different like melodies? I just don't get it.
I totally get where you're coming from, but I do think you can be similar to something, and give it more of an original spin. I realize that in something like this is hard. This wasn't Justin Marks's original creation. He's working within a property and trying to give it a new spin, and that's always harder, I think, than creating something from scratch. But by the same token, I think there was a few too many things derived from other sources. Just in my humble opinion, that's what I think. I think he could have been a little more creative, and if not, then don't try so hard to change the original source material, because there's plenty of stuff in classic Masters mythos that they could have drawn from that would have been better than the things that they were deriving from other sources. Like we were talking about the Castle Grayskull type story record. Mm-hmm. That to me was a lot more original than some of the stuff he did use in the film that was derived from Star Wars and things.
Mm-hmm. Now we're getting closer to in the movie when we finally, Adam's starting to have visions, right, of Castle Grayskull while the sorceress is talking to him.
Yeah, there's a bit of that. He has one vision in Grayskull's tomb. He gets the crest there that's going to lead him to Grayskull. And I think when they're on their way out of the city is when they're in an attack track, and he finally gets a vision of exactly where Grayskull is, which is like a lake in the evergreen forest somewhere. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Near the Mystic Mountains, which I was glad to see them referenced.
So it's Man-at-Arms, Adam, Tila, and the Colonel Logan guy that go to find Grayskull, correct?
No, actually, Man-at-Arms and Logan have like a showdown, because Logan doesn't believe. He thinks this is all just
that's right.
A big mess, and he's not going to follow him, and he actually ends up betraying them and goes to Skeletor to tell Skeletor where they are going to find Grayskull and the Sword of Light.
Yes. So they're going to find the Sword of Light. Ooh, are we excited?
Yeah, kind of.
You should be excited at this point.
You should, and this is where it starts to get into too many. There's too many battles. They have a big battle on their way out of the city. Mm-hmm. They have a big battle as they're moving, like 2 minutes later, as they're moving through the evergreen forest against Beastman and his animals, which is okay because we get our first glimpse of Battlecat at that point, who's under Beastman's control.
Well, and during this, are they not? They're following a 3D map that like Decker or someone is, projecting out of the tattoos on their body.
Yeah,
I found that to be a little
weird.
Yeah, I can't even picture this like taking this seriously in a movie with him going like. And then this map appears in front of them. I keep thinking of the Mike Young episode where Skeletor like pulls up the map or whatever, and it was like green and 3D looking. No. Nothing.
Yeah, it's that the whole section is lackluster. The battle with that's right. So they get in the Evergreen Forest. They're heading for Castle Grayskull. They have the Beastman appears with the animals and that sort of thing. Okay, this part, with the exception of the introduction of Battlecat, this scene is strictly there for the sake of having Beastman in the film, I think. It was like, Mattel said, Beastman has to be in this movie somewhere, and so he stuck him in here. And it has, even more than the tattoo thing, it has the most ridiculous visual of the entire film, is right here. Man-at-Arms, toward the end of the battle, whips off his helmet and beats Beastman into submission with his helmet. It just sounds ridiculous. And that's exactly how it's written. That he beats him into submission with his helmet. It's ridiculous. I'm sorry.
PETA does not approve.
No, they really wouldn't. And it's just silly sounding. It just, I picture it in my head. Picture Man-at-Arms with his helmet in hand, beating Beastman with it.
Little specks of blood getting stuck in Man-at-Arms' mustache.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's just stupid. I can't go there. I can't go there.
Well, while he's getting, beaten to a pulp, that's when Colonel Logan goes off and, tells, is going to reveal everything to Skeletor.
And he does.
And he does, because he's a little, I won't say it. Use your imagination. Colorful language.
Yeah. And the cool thing here, as we do the flash back and forth thing, Teela and Adam end up in a battle with one of Beastman's creatures, which is the green tiger with yellow stripes, which is trying to kill them. And all three of them end up going over a cliff and landing in a river. And they get dragged out of the river. Adam and Teela manage to get out of the river. And the cat is still there. And it's very badly wounded. It can't do anything else. Adam has the opportunity at this point to kill the cat, and he sees that it's starving just like everyone else is and that sort of thing because of Skeletor's taking over and destroying of the land, and there's no food and so on. And he shows mercy to it, and it limps off, and hence the beginning of their relationship. And that is a very cool scene and very well done, I thought.
Yeah, it's good to show a connection as to how, it's going to be an explanation later on in the movie on how, Adam obtains Battle Cat.
But then we lose the whole Cringer thing, which is kind of a bummer.
Yeah, but, they weren't going to have Cringer talk, so...
That's fine. I always liked sort of the Cringer Adam versus He-Man Battle Cat parallel, and we do lose that, unfortunately. But as the movie is, I do like this angle as well.
Well, now, and during this time, after Logan reveals all to Skeletor, that's when he takes Evelyn and silences her.
He kills her. She's already imprisoned, and he goes down and basically, rips her heart out, but not that graphically. But that's essentially what it boils down to.
Yeah.
Reaches into her chest and kills her.
I feel so bad for her. I hope she's resurrected, though. That would be good, right? Then we'd get back one of your dead people.
Yeah, that would be fine.
Okay, so next we have a battle with Adam, Teela, and Triclops.
And it's okay. They're up in the Mystic Mountains. They're heading for Grayskull, which Duncan still believing the Masters, Teela and Adam to be alive somewhere. Despite the fact that they found the crest that Adam was carrying, that Adam lost in the battle, they've continued on toward where Grayskull's supposed to be. And Adam and Teela are on their way there too. Triclops finds them with his Doom Seekers, and they have a big gruesome battle where Adam gets injured. He breaks his arm, shatters his shoulder, and Teela ends up killing another death. Triclops.
Now, I like, though, how they did injure Adam, because it really plays well, I think, with the transformation sequence that we will get near the end of the movie.
I agree. And this whole battle is done in the snow, which was a little bit confusing at first, because it doesn't make that real clear in the script.
Oh, good point, because I did not pick that up.
It's like they have this big battle, and I'm just picturing them in the mountains, and then all of a sudden he falls in a snowdrift, and you're like, where did that come from? So it was very sloppy.
Here comes Frosta.
Yeah, we wish.
Well, and two, after this, that's when he has the dream, right, of Skeletor getting the power, the Sword of Light.
Yeah.
It's somewhere around there.
Somewhere in there.
He has like a vision, like a night terror.
Well, basically, after they kill Triclops, Teela and Adam both pass out, and they wake up in a cave.
Dun,
I think that's
dun,
I think in between there is where you might have that vision. But yeah,
Yeah.
they wake up in a cave and they've been taken there by a battle cat.
Because he's nice now.
He's nice now. That's right.
He's a cute little tiger.
Meanwhile,
Well, he just told me. Okay, go ahead.
Duncan gets to the lake where Castle Grayskull is supposed to be, and there is no Castle Grayskull.
Who would have thought?
But using his keen ability to perceive that which no one else can perceive, Duncan realizes that there is a strange carving in the rock there around the lake somewhere that matches the crest that he's holding. How convenient. And he puts the crest into the hole in the rock, and Castle Grayskull rises up out of the lake. Which I would like to point out is directly out of the Castle Paranor rising up out of the ground when they do a similar thing in the Terry Brooks books.
Now, you've mentioned this Terry Brooks person. I have no idea who this is. Is this a famous author?
He's a very famous author. He's the biggest selling fantasy author after J.K. Rowling.
Oh, okay. Now, see, I know who she is, but I don't know who he is.
He's huge. He wrote, you may have heard of the Shannara series.
No.
He wrote that. They're hugely popular.
Have any of his books become movies yet?
He has written the book versions of movies.
Oh, well, that doesn't count. I mean, like,
yeah, he wrote the novels for Hook. He wrote the novel for The Phantom Menace, and I believe they're working on making his Shannara books into films right now, actually.
Okay,
well, but he's very, very hugely best-selling author.
Okay, I'm not in the literary world, so
right.
I can't.
No.
I only know J.K. because Harry Potter has movies.
Right.
Right. But in any case, how do we feel about this whole? I don't like it rising from a lake.
It's a bit weird.
Well, here's my problem. I like the image of Castle Grayskull being this old, dirty ruin, like it's usually depicted. And this coming up out of the lake, it makes me picture it was in the water, so it must be all pristine and clean and nice. And it's not Castle Grayskull to me. I sort of liked it just being this ruin in the forest that they needed to find, sort of thing. Not this. I'm not liking it.
Yeah, I mean, a planet is huge. You can have a castle hidden in some random forest, that would take forever to find.
Yeah, agreed. And that's what it should have been. It's the coming out of the lake is just really strange.
Merman?
Yeah, and there's no merman.
Yeah.
This would have been a great opportunity for merman to appear, or when they were in the river, when Tila and Adam fell in the river, merman could be there.
Well, they wasted all their special effects money on Trapjaw and Triclops.
I suppose so. We should also mention at this point that there is a character amongst Man-at-Arms' troops named Roderick, who is mentioned several times for reasons that we will get to toward the end.
Right. So anyway, yeah. Well, no, yeah. Grayskull pops up, and the drawbridge comes down. And right, Adam and Tila are debating if they should go in, or Adam says he's going to go in. He wants to make sure they're going to be okay. Correct.
What?
Right.
No, I have no idea what you're talking about.
When they're at the castle.
Oh, you jumped ahead. They were in the cave, and then Skeletor's army shows up first.
I thought we already talked about him shattering his shoulder.
We did. But where we left Adam and Tila was in the cave.
Oh, see, I'm getting confused at the battles. I was thinking that it was the battle with the Skeletor when his shoulder was shattered.
No. That was the battle with Triclops.
Oh. See, like you said, too many battles in the second half of this movie.
Yes, yeah, I agree. So Skeletor's army ends up showing up at Castle Grayskull because he's followed Logan's advice and arrived for a big battle with Man-at-Arms' group. The good versus evil armies.
Yes.
And they're on these big platform things that walk around on giant legs. Can anyone say at?
I don't know what that
The
is.
hydraulic leg castles struck me as ridiculous. I just
Yeah.
imagined like an old style castle on mechanical legs, just moving across with everyone
Yeah.
inside. I just thought
I was
it was
picturing them more like AT-ATs, but either way, it's not good.
What is an at?
Those were the big things on Star Wars, on the legs, that big mechanical things that the evil Empire uses that walk around. They look like big animals, but they're on big mechanical legs.
When
Star
they're
Wars.
on the ice planet of...
yes.
Okay, I remember.
Yeah, so not good, but that's what Skeletor brings into the battle. It's just strange.
Well,
That whole segment could have been easily cut from the film, I think.
Yeah, well, I mean, I understand that he wants to bring Skeletor's army there, which, again, not to belabor it, but Skeletor's army is very much described like the Terry Brooks demon armies that are in several of his books. Well, not even very much. It is identical. But yeah, it's I don't know. It doesn't really matter. Skeletor gets there. Adam and Tila watch Skeletor arriving, his army arriving from the cave, and then decide to ride down on Battle Cat into the fray.
also, before that, the sorceress keeps telling Adam that like time is running out.
Yep.
So
Hurry up and get your
hurry
ass
up.
down.
I only have a few more pages left in this script, and gosh darn it, you need to get to Grayskull and get the sword.
Yeah.
All right, so where do we want to skip to then? I mean, we
Adam
don't need
gets
to
down.
we don't need to describe all the battles because
No. Adam gets down there. We find out, though, I do want to mention that Logan, who is now on Skeletor's side and is wearing the same like black skull armor that all of Skeletor's generic troops are wearing, he is now Fisto. He's got the giant fist, and it even starts referencing him at that point as Fisto. So he's Fisto.
and
There you go.
apparently, hopefully not Tila's daddy.
Yeah, I doubt it. So then when Adam arrives, the like magical bridge appears leading out across the water toward the castle and
Now,
the drop.
see, this is where I had skipped to earlier.
Right. So they've arrived, and Adam goes into the castle, which has some good moments and some very lame ones.
Well,
What do you want?
Well, what did you think was lame?
Okay, well, Adam goes into the castle. The inside of Castle Grayskull is very cool, very well described. I like the look that he gave it. Sort of like, it's kind of like the Filmation one in my mind, in the fact that it's sort of like this endless labyrinth of tunnels and things, or not tunnels, but corridors and things that seem far bigger than what could fit in the castle and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Like all that. That was great. What I thought was kind of lame in this segment is that we've got this sense of impending doom. He's got to hurry up. So the sorceress first, without talking to him or anything, leads him through the castle up to the highest tower to look down on the battle, talks to him for a minute, and then leads him down deep into the underground underneath the castle. It's like, if we're in a hurry, can't we skip the trip to the highest most turret?
Yeah. Well, like a lot of these things would probably be trimmed down a little bit if they actually shot the movie.
I would hope.
To me, some of this kind of stuff makes me think like my screenplay isn't long enough. We need to add something else.
Yes.
Oh, this will take up a page. It's like there's some like filler, obviously, aspects. One thing I did like how you're mentioning how they were describing the inside of Grayskull. At one point, he talks about like there being all these crystals that line the walls.
Yeah, that
And
was cool.
I love that because to me, in my mind, that references back to the '87 movie because the sorceress has this like much different look. She has this white costume, and she has these like crystals on her head. So that made me think of that. So I applaud. It's probably not a reference, but in my mind,
I was thinking more about the crystals, like in the Crystal Chamber in the Mike Young series. But
Yeah,
the source
I
was
mean,
fine
I
too.
guess, but I didn't really like that chamber in the Mike Young, so I've kind of erased it from my memory.
There you go. Well, I will say I do like the fact that the sorceress in this was described very much like the Filmation sorceress.
Yes.
When she finally makes her appearance.
Yeah, I mean, and gosh, we don't see her until the end either.
And that was cool. She transforms from being Zor
Yeah.
into the sorceress and looks like Filmation sorceress, and that was cool.
Yeah, I mean, I like the way he described her own transformation sequence. You know,
Yes.
like the feathers are going to become the cape and everything. So I mean, she does definitely looks like more like Filmation than the Mike Young that kind of had wings built into her back.
Right. Which I like. I like both versions. So, but I was happy to see us kind of return to the classic sorceress look.
But okay, so time is running out. Tick tock, because really there's only like 10 more pages left of the script. I mean, I'm saying that's why they're hurrying because, you know, he only has a few more pages left.
Right.
So by this point in the movie, Tila is kind of invested in Adam. She's you know, she thinks he's the real deal by now.
Right. Yes.
So I liked that because she was kind of iffy, more so than Man-at-Arms. Obviously, already knew who he was, but Tila was the kind of the one that was like, I'm going to help him, but I'm going to keep a close eye on this,
Right.
of what's going on. And then the sorceress goes through the whole history of, you know, since the King Grayskull died, you know, no one has touched this sword. Oh, like it's really ticking me off because I hate the fact that King Grayskull's sword. Urgh. Thoughts?
Yeah, it doesn't.
I mean,
doesn't
I have the
bother
same.
me.
I have the same problems with this as I have with the Mike Young thing. It's like He-Man is not. I like how he's going to be the son is going to come back to do this, but I want him to be original. I don't want him to have the power of King Grayskull. Like, you know, I mean, I guess it's not technically the power of King Grayskull, but King Grayskull used the Sword of Light. I don't know. Thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I get where you're coming from. I get where you're coming from much more with the Mike Young. I think it works better in this script, and I don't have a problem with the Mike Young one personally. But I think it makes more sense in this script than it did in the Mike Young series.
Well, I think I'd be fine with, I'm fine with King Grayskull. I don't like that he used the Sword of Light. Like, no one has touched it, since him. I would have rather, like, it just been hidden away. Like, King Grayskull could just be like, King Grayskull, King Miro, King Randor. That sort of deal.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I see both sides of it. It doesn't really bother me, but...
Martin?
Yeah. In agreement, really, with Josh. Doesn't really bother me.
Fine, then, you two. I'm just going to hang up. No. So anyway, he's given the sword, because this is the part I like. He's given the sword, and I like is that it actually explains the transformation sequence a little bit. He reads the inscription, which is engraved in Grayskull's floor or whatever.
Right.
And he reads it kind of just like in passing, like kind of like in Secret of the Sword when the sorceress tells Adora, for the honor of Grayskull, and Adora's kind of like, for the honor of Grayskull? Like, when she did that, boom, that transformation should have happened. And that's what happens here, right? Adam just reads it. He's like, by the power of Grayskull, I have the power? It's like going to be one of those type of like, what am I reading? And then boom, that's when the transformation sequence happens. And I've heard criticism of this script that there is no transformation sequence. And we mentioned earlier there are 2 transformation sequences for He-Man, this being the first one. And during this transformation sequence is when he gets, the power, basically. He's healed. His shoulder and his arm get healed during the transformation process. And he kind of starts to, like, glow a bit, right?
Right, Yep.
Beautiful.
And I mean, I think he's supposed to be bulked up and that sort of thing.
Yeah, and I mean, like, it definitely was described very well.
Yeah, and I mean, he doesn't go into huge detail because this is a script. This is not the special effects department, so I think it was It's definitely there. I think it's fine.
Definitely. Now, Martin, you as well, you would consider this to be a transformation sequence, correct?
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, it's not, like I said, it's not our traditional transformation sequence, where Adam becomes He-Man.
I think that's debatable.
Well, I mean, it is, but it isn't. I mean, one thing is we can't tell in the script if Adam into, the idea, the myth, the He-Man, which he's never really called He-Man. He's still referred to as Adam in a lot of this after he does this transformation sequence. But we can't tell in the script if he's going to be bulkier or look any different.
But again, I think that's more to do with he was kind of leaving it up to the special effects department. It's very ambiguous.
Yeah.
But I don't think you can say this isn't like our traditional transformation sequence. It's just we don't know.
That's true. We don't know. I fear that it will not be, though. But I still get a transformation sequence, not one but two, so I probably would have been pleased. And I also like that when this first transformation sequence happens, that's whenever, Grayskull explodes, right? Like the light, like from Mike Young, the light comes out of the eyes and all this stuff. And,
exactly.
and it takes away all the darkness on Eternia. Like the light returns.
Right.
So I like that aspect as well. I don't know.
What that reminds me of a lot is remember there was an old 80s storybook, The Thief of Castle Grayskull?
I have the book, can't remember the plot offhand.
Basically, the plot's very similar to this film, where Skeletor's like taking over and there's darkness everywhere, and when He-Man basically he steals Castle Grayskull off to this land of darkness and that sort of thing, and then He-Man wins and Castle Grayskull brings the light back over the darkness. It's very similar to what we got here.
Well,
I don't know if that was intentional or not, but
well, then maybe we just need to send somebody that other He-Man storybook, and we got our movie.
There we go.
But so I love how it heals him. That's why I love that he got injured earlier. A couple pages before that. Well, not a couple, but significantly before that. But it heals him. The sorceress.
About 20 minutes ago.
Now, one thing I don't like is the sorceress says, "The power is yours," I believe is her line. And I remember this because that's what Captain Planet says. "The power is yours." I would rather her say something like, "You have the power," or something.
Yeah.
Just saying. It's a little nitpick, if I may. Right. So, but we should say he's not He-Man. He's still Adam. He is the He-Man of legend, right? But he's still Adam. Do we like this? What are our opinions? There's really no secret identity going on here.
I've never thought that the whole secret identity thing was, integral, even though I did like it. But I could live without it. It's one of those things that I could easily live without. And in this, he still has the by the power of Grayskull, I have the power thing, which I think that's the main thing I would miss from the transformation. So if he still did that, and that just sort of gave him power rather than transforming him physically, that would still work for me.
Yeah, I mostly agree with that. I would rather we kept the whole secret identity thing intact. I like the way it was handled, particularly like the way it was handled in the Mike Young series as to the reasons why and that sort of thing. But in the context of this film and this mythos that he was trying to create, this was fine. I could live with this. I would rather it be closer to what the traditional basic mythos, but I don't have a problem with it in this story. Kind of like, I don't have a problem with, He-Man is the jungle barbarian in the early mini-comics. In the context of those stories, it was fine. I still prefer our Filmation style story, but I can live with it in this sort of alternate reality that's being developed.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely works for this, especially how they set up, there is that whole legend that seems to kind of be well known, about this fallen sun. Like, even, I think Eva Lynn at one point says to Skeletor, like, you can be the sun that comes back,
right,
to save everyone, instead of Adam. So I kind of like that. I don't know, I just love, my favorite aspect of He-Man and She-Ra is the transformation sequence. And while, yes, I get one here, I don't know if it would be the same without a secret identity. I mean, does he always? We don't know though. We don't know like how does he always have to say, by the like is the power just in him now forever? Does he have to continuously reactivate it? These are questions that would be answered in a sequel. So,
Yeah.
I guess I can live with it for now. But we do get a transformation sequence, and that's when he goes down. Right, he goes into battle, and he's much more powerful now.
And then we get the second transformation sequence when he meets Skeletor.
Yeah, he goes out and starts a battle with Skeletor. The ultimate battle between good versus evil, He-Man versus Skeletor. And I thought, while there are some aspects of it that are really cool, compared to all the other battles we've had, or maybe because of all the other battles we already had, it seemed a little bit of a letdown.
Well, to me, though, it shouldn't be as epic just because Adam was able to survive all those other battles as Adam. So now that he's empowered as He-Man, it seems to be able to overthrow, Skeletor, who's already kind of weakened and decaying. Should be not too difficult of a task for him to accomplish. I mean,
that's not really the way it goes, though, because Skeletor, he whips out that sort of darkness thing and becomes like bigger physically. I think similar probably to the '87 movie. He's like a bigger...
but I mean, you have to remember the dark may eclipse. The dark may embrace the light, but never eclipse it. So I mean, like you have to look at this scene as you're this late into the movie. Skeletor is not going to win.
No.
You know what I mean? That's kind of the you can't look at it in my mind. You can't look at it as like an epic battle because at this point in the movie what the result is going to be.
I guess that's what I wanted to see, though. I mean, I think you had an epic battle between more so between He-Man and Skeletor in the '87 film.
Oh, okay.
See what I'm saying?
I see your point. I think I wasn't hearing your point of view correctly there. Now I think I see what you mean now.
This battle is lackluster compared to we've had so many battles already, some of which were very cool and very interesting. This is supposed to be what everything's been leading up to, and it's just a little less than what some of the others were. I think.
But I do like how, and correct me if I'm wrong, Adam throws the sword of light, taunting Skeletor to go get it, correct? And that's whenever he pummels him and gets the sword of darkness in return. Yeah,
that was cool. It was sort of a catching him off guard moment. Yes. That was pretty cool. That harkened back to a lot of the Filmation victories, I think, where he does something sort of clever.
And now,
in addition to his strength.
This part I love because this is the second transformation sequence, as Martin reminded us of, and he puts the two swords together, creating the what? The sword of power. Not the power sword, not two halves of these whatever swords, but the sword of power, which is what it's called, people. It's not the power sword. Anyway, it's called the sword of power. He puts it together and he gets all that. He gets armor and the crest. It's kind of, in my opinion, described like he's kind of has the battle armor He-Man look. But instead of that H on his chest, that HM design, it's still the cross.
You know what's funny about that? I was picturing it more, and I mean, it's vague, so you can picture it a lot of different ways. I was actually picturing something more like the snake armor, but
well, since a lot of this is MYP influenced, it could be. Go ahead, Martin.
See, I took it to be. Do you remember the armored suit in the art book with the movie designs?
Oh.
I assumed it was that, but they may or may not have been based on this script. But that was how I pictured it, with the crest and the silver armor.
Well, if you know what, you're probably correct, and I'm glad you pointed that out. Because see, if handled correctly, right? If he had that suit from the art book, people would be mad. But I think if they did the battle armor He-Man look, people wouldn't be as mad.
As long as they use the crest instead of that weird symbol that battle armor has.
Well, I'm talking battle. Yeah. They won't use, that HM thingy that's on his chest on Battle Armor He-Man, but it
Right.
would use the cross in the middle. I think a lot of fans, I guess, I don't know, it seems like they don't want He-Man to look as naked anymore,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah. I'm fine. I like the sort of basic classic original He-Man look better, but I'm all right with, I can live with battle armor.
Yeah, I mean, it would be nice to have a more classic look for He-Man in the first movie, at least. I mean, I did like the Snake Men armor, like the
I did
purpose
too.
behind them. So I mean, like they could always do that in the second movie. Since at the end we get a hint anyway that it's the Snake Men that are in the sequel.
Right. We should also point out that during this final battle, I can't remember if it's before or after he slams the two halves of the sword together. I think it's after. They finally do knock off Skeletor's mask.
Oh yes, and this is the part you did not like.
Well, it was a gimmick.
Yeah.
The chrome skull mask was there just so that they could try to do this reveal at the end, and I think it just falls flat, and it's too gimmicky, and you shouldn't have the chrome mask, didn't need it. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's like you said, it was there for the reveal. And I mean, I don't think it was that spectacular of a reveal anyway, although, I mean, obviously we're just reading it, we're not seeing it, so...
Right.
But, the ending is all right. I mean,
Skeletor dies, we should
Yeah.
say. He just sort of crumbles
Well,
away into a pile
yeah.
of bones.
yeah, I mean, but that's what's weird, too, is... because then at the very end of the movie, we get another one of those like scenes like we did in the 87 movie where we have the chrome skull, right? And a snake is slithering by looking at it, and then it gets engulfed, into the ground.
Yeah, well, and the weird thing there, too, is it's supposed to be, it calls it a humble grave, where Skeletor's been buried on the Dark Hemisphere. Who's left to take Skeletor's body back to the Dark Hemisphere and bury it?
Yeah, I mean, unless it was... Well, it might have been the Masters that went and buried it just kind of maybe out of respect. I mean, technically it is Adam's uncle.
After all of this, that to me is ridiculous.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't think about it that way, really.
It's just, he was just a pile of bones. Let it lie or stick it in the ground, and that's it. Why does he have this grave on the Dark... They specifically say it's on the Dark Hemisphere. They specifically say it's a grave. It's just weird. It just doesn't make any sense. Maybe he would have explained it somehow in the sequel, but he already killed off anyway. Like you could have said maybe Evelyn might have cared enough to take him and bury him off somewhere. Maybe, but she's dead.
Well, maybe in the sequel we'd find out that it was Evelyn, or was it Hordak or King Hiss?
See, I don't see either one of them caring enough to go retrieve his body and bury it.
Well, that's true. I mean, really, Hordak would be like, haha. But, know.
It's strange. It's really strange.
See, someone should have escaped, I think. Just looking at the other two, like, big toy franchise films, like Transformers, you had, like, at the end of the first film, Starscream escapes. And then in G.I. Joe... like all the Cobra characters are still alive, they're just mostly imprisoned. Mm-hmm. But at this, nobody is alive.
Yeah, Beastman is the only one of Skeletor's lackeys. Beastman is the only one that survives this film.
Yeah, it's a little weird because I mean, if it was somehow tied with the Snake Men, I mean, I don't know if the Snake is trying to tell us. The Snake Men are in the sequel. The Snake Men saved Skeletor. This is just a snake around Snake Mountain because it's really snaky around there. I mean, I don't know. But you make a good point. Why would he be buried like this? Why wouldn't he have just been fully destroyed? Like you said, it specifically mentions that it is a grave. So, I don't know. I don't know how to make of that. I mean, I kind of like that just because it's kind of like and it comes after the credits have rolled, just like in the 87 movie.
Yeah.
So I kind of like that nod, but again, I don't know if it was really needed.
Before that, they have their big celebration as expected in the capital city, which is a little too much like the Ewok celebration in Return of the Jedi. But the thing that I did think was kind of cool, but they show the Roderick character that's been sort of one of Man-at-Arms people for a while being repaired, sort of. He was just a normal human before, and now he's got the mechanical neck and will be referred to henceforth as Mechanic, it says in the script.
I like how Mechanic has gotten love in this script and in the Mike Young show, because he's such, like, I mean, like, in, you know, like they even say in the Mike Young show, like, he wishes he didn't have such a lame power.
Yeah.
And I like, it's like the guy as simple as, you know, his neck goes, you know, extends, gets some nice attention. I mean, I like it because it's not one of those characters that has a lot of, you know, punch.
I agree, and I mean, Fisto survives this film as well. Why is it though that Mechanic and Fisto, characters that I like but wouldn't have cared as much that if they got killed off, survived the film, and Zodak and Randor and Evelyn and Trapjaw and all these other guys, these characters that I have always felt are much more integral to Masters, are killed off. It's just some strange choices made, I think.
Well, the only reason, like I said, I can think of is just because there are so many characters that they wouldn't want to bring all of the evil people back for a sequel, because if they're going to use, say, King Hiss in the second movie and then Hordak in the third movie, I mean, they have their own, you know, villains that come with them, and then if they still have to bring back Skeletor, you know, at some point into that, it's just too many people for them to handle. That, I mean, that's the only reasoning I can think of as to why he would kill them all off.
Maybe. Still not pleased.
Well, no, I agree, because, I mean, technically I would rather see probably a sequel that had... I don't really know if I want a movie with King Hiss. I don't know if King Hiss can carry a movie.
I think if done right, he could.
Maybe if you had King Hiss and Skeletor, you could do it.
Well, and good point there, because that seems... in the way I read the end, that's what it seems like. King Hiss has something to do with bringing Skeletor back. That's just me. But anyway, that was that was the entire script. The movie that could have been. The movie that could have been, but will no longer be.
And the last thing we see with the heroes, we probably should just mention so we don't drive people completely crazy who weren't not able to read this script. Adam leaves Man-at-Arms in charge of the kingdom temporarily and rides off into the sunset to search for something, which I don't think is clear what that is.
The remnants of Skeletor's forces, I think.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. Something to that effect. On his own, though. Which I think
shouldn't he ride off and look for his long-lost twin sister? I'm just saying. But no, so maybe Beastman is actually dead, too. Because He-Man's going to find him and kill him.
Could be. Could be.
Maybe Man-at-Arms lent him his helmet and he can continue the beating. Here's an interesting note, though, that you pointed out that I had forgotten, that he leaves Man-at-Arms, you know, temporarily in charge. Maybe Man-at-Arms will assume the role of King in the next movie so that He-Man can be more of an enforcer presence. Now, I would not like that. I mean, I would not want to see Man-at-Arms as a king, but
King.
Or maybe you just have like the Masters as like a ruling council or something.
Now that I could live with. Like if he brought back old school style, yeah, like where it was the Masters cult that was kind of ruling everything Hall of Wisdom style.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be all right, I suppose. The Hall of Wisdom is mentioned in this script. We should probably point it to briefly as like a temple.
Yeah, very briefly, but it is in there.
As like a temple place, not a place from which it was ever ruled. I don't think it was just sort of a temple for the cult.
True, but I do like that it was mentioned.
Yes, I do too.
Something that it did impress me about the script is that clearly Justin Marks has he either knew this beforehand or he's done his research, but there's lots of references to, you know, things that have existed in Masters of the Universe lore, like the Doom Seekers and the Shadow Beasts and the Hall of Wisdom and King Grayskull and so on and so on.
Yeah, he definitely. He had to have seen more than just the Mike Young series. I suspect he was pretty familiar with most of everything in the Masters universe, I think.
Yeah, I would definitely say he was given more than just, say, the Mike Young series Bible or something like that to go off of when making the script. So I applaud him, especially if he did go out and do his own research or was already, a fan of the property. Because even a general fan is going to remember, some of the key elements, because they're the ones that would stick with someone. Even if it's, Castle Grayskull has the power in it, and the sorceress is in Castle Grayskull. People remember those type of things that were long-running in the series. So that's pretty good. But yeah, but by no means was this a bad script.
No, I think it was a very good script.
Yeah, and I mean, like, if people are open to us, I guess I'm open to new interpretations because we'll always have the original. Like, nothing can ever touch that. It's always the first thing that was He-Man. It's there. It's not erased. So I guess I don't mind tinkering with the property, later on, because we'll always have it.
And it's by no means unprecedented. I mean, Batman of the 1989 film, or of the Dark Knight film, is a much different Batman than the Batman of the 60s cartoon series, or live action series, or the 30s comics. So,
yeah, and I totally agree. Because even like with Tim Burton's Batman, you could actually understand what he was saying, and then Chris Nolan's Batman is Rachel, and you can't really understand what he's saying. So I totally get your point on that. So even very similar ones, look and feel, Burton and Nolan's Batman can be different.
Yes. I'm very much open to new interpretations as well. The thing that I don't want to see is just the same story over and over again. Mm-hmm. Just, in different formats.
Hey, that's a good point, because, we already had 130 episodes of the original He-Man. We had 65 of New Adventures. We had 39 of the revival. And really, the revival, yes, it had different elements like King Grayskull and stuff, but for the most part, it's kind of
It was just a straight-up retelling of the story with a few different character origins.
So, and who knows, with this actually on screen, if people would actually go into a movie with an open mind, I think they'll enjoy it a lot more than if they go in saying, like I would, if I don't have that transformation sequence, I'm just going to be sad.
Yeah, I think I agree that they can go different ways with the story. I as well, like Martin said, don't want to see just rehashing of the same things. By that same token, though, I do think there were some key elements that they could have left alone and made interesting, like the secret identity thing, like not killing off Randor in the first 5 minutes. Those kinds of things. I think you could strike a little bit more of a balance. This script, well, a very, very good script. It's not the Masters movie I wanted to see because it was a little too much of a departure. Not a lot too much. Just a little too much of a departure.
I probably would have liked it.
I think I would have liked it.
Yeah, I really can't see myself hating this if this was the movie I went to see. I just can't see myself hating it.
I wouldn't have hated it either. I just, like I said, I think it could have. It's not the Masters movie I want to see. I think it would have been a very good Masters movie.
Okay, I can see your point. Like, had I done it, I would have done it this way. But since I didn't get to do it, I'll settle for this because it's going to entertain me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right. Fair enough. So we all kind of liked the script, surprisingly, because I believe online a lot of the reviews, well, some of them gave it some good reviews.
Yeah.
Some were like, this is not He-Man. So I don't know. I thought it was He-Man for the most part, with some changes. You be the judge if you ever read it. So I'm glad you stuck around for that, and we hope we opened your eyes to what possibly could be something that comes along. Be prepared for some changes in He-Man. Embrace it. You might like it. You can have the power. You can be a hero with He-Man. And that's my advertising spill. Thanks for listening. I'm John Callis, also known as The Shadow.
I'm Martin Penny, also known as Wacky Martin.
And I'm Just Lancourt, also known as Just Lancourt.
Good
journey!
Which they did not say in this movie. Someone should add that to the script.
True.